someone from her office continue to provide updates to our organization. And also we have interim president Frankie Eleptico of the Northern Marianas College. He's going to provide NMC updates and anything that's going on with fall semester. Next on our lineup, we have Mr. Jeffrey De Leon Guerrero. He's from Northern Marianas Housing Corp. He's the CDBG-DR Finance Manager. Too many acronyms, but I'm sure he'll tell us what CDBG-DR means. I know what it means, but I'll let him explain it. And then next we will have Ken Lujan from the Guam Small Business Administration. And then of course we have Director Justin Andrew, Director of Central Statistics Division for the CNMI Department of Commerce. He will discuss the prevailing wage survey and the next steps. And last but not the least, we have Matt De Leon Guerrero, who's a member of the newly created Governor's Economic Advisory Council. He's sitting in for Mr. Jerry Tan, who's the chair of the Economic Advisory Council. Matt will just let us know what the roles of the council are and the future goals for our islands. And we know that they've also are providing recommendations to the governor and how to help us continue to reopen our economy. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Maxine, our executive director, just to talk about the format of this meeting, and then we'll start our meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Velma. I'm gonna go ahead and just turn it over, actually just go ahead and get started to Director Eugene Tebuteb at the CNMR Department of Labor. And while he's getting started, I'm gonna go ahead and just pull up his PowerPoint. Go ahead, Director.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see the PowerPoint up, so just waiting on that piece. Okay, there it is. And thank you so much for that introduction, Velma and Maxine. Thank you both for inviting me here. So Hafaday, Tiro, and good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eugene Tebuteb, and I am the Director of Employment Services for the Department of Labor. I also oversee specific areas of the PUA program. My presentation today will focus on the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance and Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation Programs in the CNMI, with careful attention to how we are doing so far. Next slide, please. All right, like every presentation conducted by the department, I do have to mention several caveats before I begin. Number one, this presentation is intended for educational purposes only. This presentation does not constitute a legal opinion or legal advice, and please consult your attorney or the regulations. So I've broken down this presentation into topics that I felt were important discussion points. Today I will be discussing the importance of program integrity, eligibility requirements, eligibility conditions, the most up-to-date data that the department has compiled as of June 29, this past Monday, key updates of the program, and finally, some very helpful PUA, FPUC resources that are currently available to the public. Next slide, please. Program integrity. The programs and provisions in the CARES Act operate in tandem with the federal and state UI programs. These programs operate under the fundamental requirement that only individuals entitled to benefits if they are no longer working through no fault of their own, and that these individuals must be able and available to work. The latter sentence could be considered the pillar or foundation that establishes how we handle eligibility questions, and is also what we as agency staff must hold to a uniform standard when administering the program. Next slide. All right, if you are a US citizen, citizen of the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, CNMI, Guam, Republic of Palau, American Samoa, the RMI, or an individual falling under the qualified alien category and fall under one or more of the listed categories of acceptable COVID-19 related reasons for loss or interrupted employment, you may qualify for the program. To the right of this slide, you will notice the different categories of qualified aliens that may qualify for the program. And not to worry, a copy of this slide will be made available to you upon request. Next slide. Individuals must also meet conditional requirements that are mandated by federal or state law. The requirements are listed on this slide, but I will not go through all of them for the sake of brevity. Again, this presentation will be made available for you. Do note that the 3 work search requirements have been waived by Hawaii statute. And since we will more or less follow Hawaii law when administering the programs in the CNMI, we will also waive the work search requirements, but more will come on that part. Next slide. Since the time we issued our press release sometime in May, I think we're on a different slide. Can you go back 1 slide? Since the time we issued our press release sometime in May, the department has received over 1,000 email inquiries and over 2,000 telephone inquiries. Since June 17, which is the time we launched the PUA program in the Marianas, we've disseminated over 3,500 paper applications and have received 795 of them back. As of this past Monday, there are over 4,000 online portal applications. So we have some work to do. Next slide. So this is where we are at in the program. The program can be demarcated into several phases. Phase 1 involves the online registration of employers seeking to assist their affected employees by listing detailed separation information. And phase 2, which is where we are at right now, involves making the claims application process available online and through walk-ins, or in the CNMI's case, through drive-through. I understand we've had several issues with our online portal, so I thank everyone who had the chance or opportunity to inform us of those problems. I assure you that our vendor is well aware of all of our online technical problems and have completed some fixes. We will continue to update the general public by issuing out press releases from time to time. The minute you encounter a problem with our online portal, please feel free to contact us so we make the proper notifications. You do notice that phase 3 and phase 4 are grayed out, and that's because we're not there yet, but we are almost there. Phase 3 of the program will commence this Friday. Phase 4 will ensue immediately after we start making those adjudications. Next slide. So I find the following extremely useful in guiding PUA FPUC claimants. Our department's website will contain the PUA initial and weekly application forms, along with our benefits rights information handbook, press releases, and fact sheets. The Higher Marianas portal is, as most of you are already aware, where claimants can submit initial and weekly claims, and is also where claimants can get a hold of what is called a PUA claimant guide, which is basically a document that walks through claimants during the application process. And finally, to the extreme right of this slide is our hours of operation and contact information. Next slide, please. And I believe that concludes my presentation for today. I will now entertain questions for the duration of my time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Tepitub. I've currently not received any questions to the chat. So if any of our participants do have questions, please go ahead and send them over to me. I will go ahead and maybe just start off with, Director, you covered a lot of the different information that people have been asking, but just to summarize then, so say that if somebody is having a difficult time trying to go through the PUA process, I know that some people have said things about calling being difficult or email being difficult. If you were to give recommendations to somebody, what would you say the best steps for them to move forward would be?
I would recommend that, if you think you have a case, go ahead and submit it. We'll do our jobs here to adjudicate those claims. I did forget to mention one more thing. We are holding another webinar on July 9th at 9:00 a.m. This is a tentative time.
Great. So just to reiterate, there will be another webinar that specifically helps individuals who are trying to go through the PUA process being executed by the Department of Labor. So thank you so much, Director. And I guess from the business side, if a business has already gone through and submitted all of their employees, is there anything else from the business side that they need to do to support the Department of Labor, Director?
Yeah, so and I thank the businesses for that. That was very helpful. It should help the PUA claimants when they submit their claims. Right now, there's nothing else to be done except we will probably request some separation information during the weekly part of the PUA program. So you have the initial part where phase 1, employers logged on to enter separation information. And that was a retroactive retroactive time frame. And so now we're going to be moving into the weekly claim certifications, and we may request more information from you.
So more information on that will be at a later date when we get to that phase in the process, but you do anticipate that businesses weekly will be needing to go in and just to reiterate or affirm the information that they've said below or before. Is that correct, Director?
That is correct.
Okay. So we do have like one or two questions here. I have that Secretary Beneventi had mentioned that the 4 landline telephones would be added to the CNMI Department of Labor office for applicants to have their questions answered. Is there anything else in the works or plan to keep communication lines open between DOL and the applicants?
I know Secretary Beneventi mentioned that 4 additional lines will be coming, and a press release will indicate those numbers sometime today. Other than that, we do have our email inbox if callers cannot get through the phone lines. That's info@puamarianas.com.
Thank you, Director. And the last question that I'm seeing is, does vacation pay and sick leave pay affect PUA eligibility?
They do.
Perfect. All right. So then I would just go ahead and continue to be honest on your PUA applications, and the Department of Labor will process that accordingly. All right. Any other closing remarks, Director?
No, thank you so much again, Velma and Maxine, for allowing us to come here and just discuss our updates here, and we'll be ready to discuss more updates in the coming future. So thank you.
And thank you, Director. I know that you are one of the busiest departments right now in the CNMI. So thank you to you and the staff and secretary for continuing to make sure that as many people can apply of this resource as possible. So thank you, Director. Next, we are moving on to Interim President Frankie Elliptico, who's going to be sharing some updates from the Northern Marianas College, as well as giving a little bit more information about the upcoming fall semester in case there are people that are looking and really want to start smart with NMC. So thank you so much for joining us today, Frankie.
Thank you so much, Maxine, and thank you so much, Chamber President Velma, for allowing me and the college to give some updates about what's happening here on our campus on Saipan Road and Tinian. We'll definitely try to stick to my 7-minute time, but please let me know if I start going over. I do want to keep my presentation, a short presentation this morning, centered around the opening of our campus, the reopening of our campus, as well as the fall semester and what that will look like. But I also wanted to share just some of the updates that we've been able to accomplish over the past several weeks. And I will start sharing my video, my screen. Let me know if that works. So again, the central question for NMC that we have been receiving is, what does the fall semester look like? As you know, in March of 2020, 3 months ago, or more than 3 months ago, the college closed its campuses on Saipan, Rhoda, and Tinian after, of course, many other closures here in the CNMI. And this was triggered also by some of the first positive cases on Guam when we started to receive that on March 15. Within a week's time, we were able to conduct virtual drills for our NMC faculty as well as our NMC students, somewhat of a practice run. And that was not nearly enough to be able to do it, but we did it. And we were able to migrate within a week's time, all of our classes to a virtual format. And this was over 200 classes for over 1,200 students. So it was not easy. It was not smooth either. I wish I can report that it was a perfectly seamless process, but it wasn't. There was a lot of hiccups here and there, and many of our team members and many of our students had challenges with internet connectivity, devices, and other things. We tried to address that on a case-by-case basis, and I think we did very well. Again, it was not perfect, but I'm really proud of my team. And I know, again, our central discussion is the fall semester, but I also wanted to share last month, we did graduate because of the work of our staff and our faculty. We did graduate our class of 2020, and I just wanted to share some of the photos. Give me a few seconds to share, because I know the chamber membership includes many of our donors, and I wanna make sure that I give them the thanks and the appreciation that they deserve for continuing to support NMC through their donations, their support, their guidance. And here are some of the students. I wish I can post all the photos and have the time to share some of the other achievements for our students. But again, given the time restriction, I'm only gonna be able to share just a little bit. But again, thank you so much to our donors. Our graduates are working in all industries across the CNMI, in healthcare, in public safety, in the private sector, in telecommunications, in retail, and just all over, and all across all sectors of the private sector. So I want to thank all the chamber members again for their support. Again, we did graduate one of our largest classes in this past May. We did postpone NMC's graduation to December of 2020 later this year, but we did commemorate the students' achievement by putting together a video as well as a photo collage and asking them to take photos. And we've been sharing a lot of these achievements in various newspapers and media. So thank you for allowing me to share that. But what's next? What's next for NMC? what does our summer semester look like and what does our fall semester look like? Because many of our students are your employees or they will be your employees later on. So we are, of course, doing our part to minimize and prevent the spread of COVID. Our primary strategy has been to ensure that we reduce any kind of density on campus with regard to employees and students. So we, earlier in June, it's already July, earlier in June, we began reopening our campuses to employees, but we haven't been allowing all employees to come back all at once. So we're reducing density by only allowing about 25 to 30% of our employees and having others continue to telework. Our summer semester is online, as well as we're also beginning today allowing students to return to campus in a phased manner if they have scheduled appointments. Again, this is our part in trying to reduce any kind of gathering or large lines. Usually when we do have, in previous years, we've had large gatherings during, in anticipation of the fall semester. We are requiring students to wear face masks, and employees, of course, when they're on campus, or any of our contractors, vendors, or anyone on campus to wear face masks. We are asking folks, of course, to stay home if they are having any kind of symptoms that are COVID related or flu-like. We are, of course, also asking individuals, students and employees to maintain proper hygiene, of course, washing their hands, avoiding touching the face, and all of these reminders are throughout the campus. But the big question, again, centers around what does our fall 2020 semester look like, that, which begins in August. And it's not, our fall semester will not be a all online or all in person approach. It will incorporate a blended approach that will have both an online and in-person component. So we're looking at it class by class by class. So if a particular class can be fully online, that class will be online. But if a particular class needs that face-to-face interaction, for example, some of our classes have a lab component, so we do need to have that face-to-face component, then that particular class will have a lab component. So we don't have a magic formula where we say 50% of our classes are online and 50% are in person. It's going to depend on the class itself. And of course, the primary and overriding consideration is the safety of our students and our employees. So we also have the following considerations. Right now, we are requiring COVID-19 testing for any NMC employee that's returning to campus. So they've been taking advantage of, or they took advantage of the testing that was available at the airport. And we are in communication with the COVID-19 task force through the chairman and through CHCC to determine if there is another testing opportunity that can be focused on NMC, that can allow NMC students and employees to avail of the testing. We're also trying to increase professional development and training for our team members, because this is an entirely new platform. It's not new for all of us, but it is new for a lot of our staff members to be able to make sure that they're continuing to perform at 100% while teleworking or working from a remote site. We're also looking at the way we space our classrooms, how we distribute and have textbooks. We're also wanting to make sure that students have a meaningful student experience here at the college, because when you're a college student, you're not just taking classes, it's the social experience, it's the civic experience. So we want to make sure we're engaging students at all levels in a meaningful way, not just that we had, you know, a Facebook Live event, or not just that we had a Zoom meeting, but we want to make sure that we're meaningfully and safely engaging them throughout the semester. And of course, we're continuously guided by COVID-19 task force guidelines and requirements, as well as what the overall pandemic looks like here in the CNMI, and we're responding respectively. The college, as always, remains responsive to our workforce needs. So we do have our degree programs, though these will not be delayed, they will not be postponed, they will not be canceled. We have workforce programs in business management, in nursing, business administration, hospitality management, criminal justice, and other degree programs. Our certificate programs also continue to grow. And I don't want to go through the list, but I'll also make the slide available for anyone who requests it. But what we're also doing, and what I'm excited to share, is also some of the things and programs that are kind of in the pipeline for NMC that responds to kind of the increase in healthcare workforce needs here in the CNMI. So we are in conversations and preliminary discussion with regard to launching a medical lab technician program and radiology lab technician program, specifically to meet the needs of our healthcare industry here. We submitted an apprenticeship grant for to the Department of the U.S. Department of Labor. We were happy to have partnered with the CNMI Department of Labor on that. We also submitted a 1.5 million youth apprenticeship grant. I do have some positive developments on the EDA side and some of our grants applications, particularly 2 of the grants. So without going into detail, I will be, the college will be coming out with a more formal announcement later once we get the green light to make that announcement. We are also focusing on some other grant management programs in collaboration with CHCC. CREES has a lot of announcements. Patty, our interim dean, shared with me a whole page of bullet points to share with the chamber, but I'm afraid that's going to take a whole other hour, which I don't have. But I would love to share that at a future meeting, and their work in working with the Tinian Cattlemen's Association on Tinian, with the pineapple commercialization of pineapple here on Saipan, and many other projects that impact our economy and grow capacity here in the CNMI. I also want to put in a plug. NMC we want to make sure we're continuously and increasingly more relevant to your needs in the private sector. So we are asking private sector members and chamber members to please help our assessment. We do have a survey instrument we'll be sharing with Maxine, and if we can share it that way, to help us kind of guide what the next couple of years will look like. We have information from the previous years, but specifically we want to know if your workforce needs have changed and how they have changed based on this pandemic and other events that are going on in the CNMI. So we want to make sure that our programs are relevant to those needs that you have. And with that, Maxine, I will field any questions. And again, thank you for this opportunity to share these updates with you.
Thank you so much, President. That was definitely a great update. And I wanted to go ahead and affirm that we will definitely be sharing that survey with our members. And I wanted to go ahead and thank you as well for always continuing to make sure that NMC, and we're using that platform in order to funnel the workforce for here. And you do a particularly great job of making sure that the students who graduate from NMC are going to be able to enter the workforce and are going to be able to get jobs whenever they graduate. So thank you continuing to reach out to businesses. I've received one question, and it's one from the heart. It's asking what would you say to students? So we do have a lot of chamber members who have representatives that are also going and trying to receive their degree from NMC. And so I know that with everything going on with COVID, that it is difficult on families, it's difficult in the workplace, and for people who have worked so hard, especially those who are set to graduate in December, what words of encouragement would you give to them to continue going during these hard times?
Whoa, that's heavy. Well, first of all, if I can, for all the chamber members and for anyone in our community, please take a look at the pictures that I've just showed you with regard to our graduates. Those graduates who graduated, by the way, last month, not only worked and succeeded through the pandemic, but they also succeeded and endured through Super Typhoon Yutu when 85% of our campus was destroyed, and many yet still lived through and worked through, succeeded through Super Typhoon Soudelor. So 3 disasters, unprecedented in nature, have not swayed and affected these students in a way that, threw them off course. They continued, they persevered. So if I were to answer that question directly, Maxine, please look to our students who just graduated, because they did not let 3 unprecedented disasters get in their way of earning their degree.
That's truly meaningful, President. And I think that also goes to show the sentiment that I would really like to convey from the Chamber and from our community is to thank you to the NMC team, your team of administrative staff, your instructors, the ones who also needed to show up and who constantly had to change with the environment in order to help students achieve their dreams. And I think that, after having over 80% of your campus destroyed and you to now facing this, I can imagine that it is very difficult for your staff to come in every single day and still continue. But I think that it speaks both to the resiliency of the students who are trying and who want to better their lives, as well as your staff who are there for them. We're truly blessed to have an entity like NMC advocating for advancement of the CNMI through education.
Thank you, Maxine. Absolutely, all the credit goes to all the team that I work with, and especially all the students who continue to do their part. And I just sit here and take all the credit for all their hard work. So thank you to them.
You are also very humble as well, President. I do have a question. Are you able to talk about the prior service learning for those employees who are interested in getting a degree?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you answered that question. It's the prior, I think you meant, is it prior service or prior learning?
Prior learning.
Okay. We do have a program called the Prior Learning Assessment Program that allows individuals to earn college credit for demonstrable knowledge in areas that they can, of course, demonstrate and get up to 30 college credits. Again, this is not a, for college credit for work that you have performed. It's knowledge that you have gained outside of the traditional classroom environment. So it does allow for the college to award up to a certain number of credits for individuals who have received a lot of training and a lot of knowledge, ability, and capability outside the traditional classroom setting. So please feel free to email me. The program does continue here at the college, and we have had successful individuals who have been able to earn a few credits and be able to take some in-class credits as well and finish their college degree. One notable one, I believe he is a chamber member, Kevin De Leon Guerrero, who owns and manages Priority Care, is an individual who benefited from the Prior Learning Assessment Program. We have other individuals who have gone through that route and who continue to also pursue higher degrees. Now, I do want to, there's a lot of details involved. Please email me, I'll share my email. The program will continue in the fall semester, so we're excited to share that if any of the chamber members are interested.
We can definitely share that information as well as with the survey. So if there are chamber members that are interested, especially going back maybe this fall semester, there's no better time to go ahead and further yourself than in the middle of uncertainty.
Yes. Maxine, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just, because I have this platform and there's a lot of folks, there may be a lot of folks listening. I just want to remind everyone, and please, if you have employees or even kids that are going to school or yourself, today is the deadline to submit your SHEFA and CNMI scholarship application. So just go online to those websites for those programs and fill it in. You can submit your supporting documents later, but today is the deadline. Please text your friends, your coworkers, your kids, your parents. We do have parents who are students. We have grandparents who are students. So today is the deadline. Avail of these financial aid programs. We also have federal financial aid funds. So please, I know that a lot of our employees are being impacted by the pandemic. So access to these funds is a priority of ours. So we want to make sure that we're promoting the deadline as much as possible, and we're helping all individuals get financial aid whenever they can.
So I'm challenging everyone who is listening via our Zoom or Facebook. You are to tell 2 people today, 2 people that you love, whether that's an employee, whether that's someone you care about. Please just, even if you don't think that they're interested in attending, if they haven't talked to you about it, just tell 2 people just in case. It's definitely a deadline you don't want to miss. President, do you have any other closing remarks?
Thank you so much, Maxine, and thank you again for letting me speak.
Oh no, thank you for taking the time. We're really, really grateful again for the role that NMC plays in our community and for continuing to make sure that people have access to higher education. So thank you so much, President Elipico. All right, we are moving right along. Next up, we have the Northern Marianas Housing Corporation. They are going to be giving a presentation about the Community Development Block Grant. It was available after Super Typhoon Yutu. So we have Jeff De Leon Guerrero, who's going to be here giving that presentation. So I'm going to hand it right over to you, Jeff.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Before I start off, I have to introduce my counterpart, Fred Camacho. He's our new compliance manager that we hired as well. Me and him will be running the DR division, with, of course, with more to come. So I'll get right into it. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm going to go over like the basic overview of the program and then finish up with an update. Here, if I can get the slide to work. Okay, there we go. So what is CDBG-DR? It's part of the HUD Community Block Development Grant Program, but it's actually focused on disaster recovery. It starts with an appropriation by Congress, and it's really focused on long-term recovery efforts from a presidentially declared disaster area. So for Saipan, for CNMI, the whole CNMI, this focuses on both Mangkut and Yutu. It is a housing program at heart, so it focuses on the low and moderate income persons. It starts with Congress and it moves to HUD. HUD does a unmet need calculation, and from there they publish a Federal Register notice and they award the funds. So us, Samoa, California, there's actually a big portion of grantees that were affected by 2018 disasters. And then, so on our part here, we have to prepare the action plan, submit certifications. It's actually a very lengthy process. We've been at it for about a year now. And then from then on, we go out and administer these funds to the community. There are program steps, and I won't go through all of them in total. This will be available to you guys if you ask for it. Just let me know. Starts with the allocation. We move into the unmet needs analysis, and that's just the breakdown of everything that's been damaged that hasn't been taken care of. So I want you guys to keep in mind that this program is what I call the last resort. Keep that in the back of your mind, because the only way these funds can be used is after FEMA, SBA, your insurance claims, anything that has to help with the costs are done first. So this is our last resort. We move through, we're currently in the community engagement process. Our action plan is out for comment right now. And as we go through that, we get into the eventual moving of the program. And so, yeah, I won't go through all of that, but that's there for you guys to see if you need. We are currently under HUD approval right now. So we've done the planning and assessment. It's important to know that the administration has designated us as the lead agency. So everything is with their approval, of course. We're kind of doing it for the CNMI. And so we're currently in the HUD approval section right now. So what can we do with these funds? There are eligible activities. There's kind of three main areas of the grant. The main focus is housing, as this is a HUD grant. It's also getting infrastructure back up to speed on the whole island now. This is 2 years into the grant, I understand, and that's kind of the way the CDBG DR program works. There's also a small section there for economic development and revitalization, kind of getting the CNMI back on track. So some examples of the DR funded programs are, of course, replacement of damaged properties, storm damage infrastructure, helping people get back into their damaged homes, and then part of the economic revitalization are the business grants and loans. And more importantly, I think it's very important to highlight that it can be used as a match for FEMA projects. And there are a lot out there. There's a big portion of this grant that will cover the FEMA match portion, which is always the best use of money. You pay 10% for somebody else to cover 90% of the funds. So moving on, the grant does have a 20% portion that's allocated to planning and administration. Administration of the grant is capped out at 5%. And then planning can be anywhere 15% or less. That's up to the grantee. So this grant, every dollar that gets used has to be tied back to the disaster. So it truly is, in a sense, a disaster recovery grant in the sense that anything that we spend the money on goes back to the disaster. No matter what we use, every single dollar has to have an explanation of how it was related to either Typhoon U2 or Mangkhut. And again, let me reiterate that it is a last resort funding for the CNMI. There are national objectives that have to be met. It is a HUD program, a housing program, so low and moderate income persons are always the priority. You know, elimination of slums or blight, and then also urgent need, if that was the case. And just to kind of give you a screenshot of that whole breakdown, you know, yeah. And so as part of the grant, we are required to document everything. We do have, HUD has a system called the Disaster Recovery Grant Reporting System. It's kind of our way of talking to HUD. It's their way of keeping us in check. We basically put all of our plans from every project, and we do projections and timelines to show them that we're staying on track. And it's also our avenue of drawdowns for the funds. And part of that in DRGR that we're required to do are these quarterly progress reports. They help, again, HUD keep track of us. We are required to update our numbers on a quarterly basis just to ensure that we fit everything within the timeline. I didn't mention it earlier, but all the money that we get for the CDBG-DR program has to be expended within 6 years. And I can elaborate on that later. HUD will come down to monitor our projects as with, I'm sure, every other federal agency. And, you know, they'll do stuff from on-site reviews, desk reviews, and on our side, everybody that we work with, we have to ensure that we have a very robust and strict monitoring system that keeps the whole program in check. And so just to kind of round it out for you guys, this is probably the part you guys are most interested in. Where are we at, right? And the program update, so just to give you an idea, we're awarded a whopping $243 million. If you round it off, it's 244. And that's a lot of money for the CNMI. We've been kind of the favorite topic ever since this news came out. And so the governor kindly designated us as the lead agency to administer these programs. They are HUD money, and NMHC currently, operates under HUD money. So yeah. So just to give you guys an idea of what this grant entails and where we have to be, there is an implementation plan that's due in July. I have to submit financial management and grant compliance certifications. It's a very lengthy process. In the past, other grantees kind of messed it up for us. And so we're currently in a place where, we have to be truly robust with our financial guidelines and controls. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we currently are in our draft action plan. I will work with Maxine. You guys can, I can send a link to where that's at. So you guys, oh, actually, no, you can find it on our NMHC website. And our action plan is due this year on August 31st. And then from there, after everything has gotten executed and the governor signs a grant agreement, then we have our monitoring due dates, our quarterly reports. And of course, we have to spend all of this money within 6 years. So I can start with the implementation plan in terms of updates. As I mentioned, it was due in July. We submitted it in April, and the actual due date was April, but it was pushed back to July for the COVID. So it worked to our advantage. We submitted it in April, and it has been approved by HUD as of May 8th of this year. The financial management and grant compliance certification, that was due at the same time. We submitted it on the same time as the implementation plan, and that's currently in review. We're awaiting HUD's feedback on that. And then the action plan. So that's due on August 31st. Our 30-day comment period began about a week ago, a little bit more on June 19th. And we actually just got feedback from HUD on the action plan that's listed on our public comment on the website. And so we're currently addressing their comments in hopes of speeding up this approval process. And we're aiming to submit this action plan to HUD by the end of July. So hopefully if we get that action plan in a month earlier than every other grantee that needs to submit as well, we can move forward to getting the drawdown. And so the signing of the grant agreement, once our action plan is approved by HUD, the governor formally executes a grant agreement, and that, solidifies our partnership with HUD. That officially starts the 6-year timeline. We did consult with HUD based on our timeline right now. Our best case scenario, this is our most popular question, when are we gonna get the money? And our best case scenario is end of November. Now, those are best case scenarios. That would be great. And before we can see drawdown of funding and finally inject this money into the CNMI. So on that note, we do have a nice little quaint CDBG-DR office. You guys are always welcome to come by. It's unmarked because we want to remain anonymous. I'm just kidding. No, we'll definitely put a sound out there. It's all part of the build process. We're actually looking to extend to another building because this program is actually going to grow bigger than we anticipated when we first got the building going. So that's our nice little office down in the annex area. And that pretty much wraps up my presentation, guys. I hope that was informative, and we'll move it on to questions.
It really was. Thank you so much, Finance Manager. That's a lot of information. And I do want to also go ahead and give a little shout out to Fred Camacho. He's a longtime chamber member and was very, very active in making sure that families were able to try to get back into homes after U2. So you've got the right guy right by your side. I'm very glad to see his face. So we did, one of the questions that popped up, you did answer in your presentation, is the action plan accessible to to review, and it is on your website. And so then also just to clarify a little bit, is it 10% of the CBDG dollars are available for economic development projects?
Currently, we have it listed at about 9%. And yeah, 9% right now.
Somewhere about $20 million that could be for economic development. And so I really would behoove all of our members of businesses that were impacted by U2, go take a look at the action plan. There's a 30-day comment period. Make sure that you look before July 19th. Especially you're mentioning that there could be a type of program that would do business grants and loans, and it could be for mitigation projects for maybe buildings that were destroyed during U2, if that were a part of the action plan later. Theoretically, maybe. So yeah, if you are a business, and also just, you know, for our members that were affected by U2, for families, just go take a look at the action plan. This is a lot of money. And so we're really grateful that NMHC is taking the lead in making sure that there can be economic development from U2. I know they've worked very, very hard for 2 years to make sure that this grant could be in place. So if you could just take 15 to 20 minutes of your time to go give them some comments, it's much better to get that comment now than to have people complain later. They were asking you for your opinion. Please go give it to them. So go ahead and find that on their website. That seems to be the only questions I've received so far. Jeff or Frank, are there any other closing remarks you would like to address?
Thanks, guys, for having us. We encourage you, as Maxine mentioned, please go in, take a look at the action plan, and yeah, send us your comments.
Well, we thank you for taking the time. I noticed that due date was on July 2nd, but you had submitted it by April. I can tell you are not one of those students that stayed up the night before in college to submit at 8 a.m. So thank you for taking this process very, very seriously. We really, really appreciate all that NMHC and as well as your smaller team working on CDBG specifically is taking to make sure that these funds can really benefit people here. And I know you mentioned, you know, in other territories, it didn't go so smoothly. So that's making it so there are a few more hoops that you all have to jump through. So thank you for continuing to make sure that these are resources that are going to be available to people here. Thank you again so much for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right, so we are going to go ahead. I now have Mr. Ken Lujan, who is here. Haven't tested out the audio. Ken, can I hear you?
Hi, Maxine. Can you hear me?
Perfect, I can. This is so exciting.
All right.
All right,
That's
this is Mr. Ken Lujan from Guam SBA. He has been working tirelessly over the last few months, making sure that businesses have answers to their questions, whether that's about the PPP, the EIDL loans. He also does very funny emails where he compares everything to baseball games. So while you're going ahead and doing your introduction, I'm going to go ahead and pull up your presentation.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Maxine, for the opportunity to present some information to the general membership of the Saipan Chamber of Commerce. And also special thanks to President Velma Palacios for allowing me the opportunity as well to present to you some information relative to our EIDL program as well as our PPP program. And so once you have the presentation up, I'll be ready to start. Okay, great. There you go. We're going to talk first about the EIDL update. We'll present some information about the EIDL updates, as well as the PPP loan forgiveness information and application process. Today, we're going to cover a little bit about the updates, as well as the 2 PPP loan forgiveness applications, and some insight and information as to the impact that was created as a result of the financial support that was provided to the CNMI. Next slide, please. Go on to next. And one more. Okay, Here's a summary, basically what the thus far as of June 26, a summary of what type of financial assistance has been given to the CNMI. In the top portion there, it shows an advance summary. And basically, these are 208 businesses that actually received advance monies from the SBA, amounting to over $1 million, in which these monies are actually grant monies and monies that do not necessarily have to be paid back. It's not in the form of a loan. So these monies are continue to be issued out to the community, and the funds are still available for those in need. The loan summary below is a demonstration of how many businesses who have actually received loan approvals from the SBA directly. 206 businesses within the CNMI have received loans that are waiting for either been dispersed or waiting for funds to be dispersed. And that dollar amount is actually $13 million that's going to go out to your community. Next slide, please. So basically, what would happen about a month or so ago, the EIDL loan application process was actually at a standstill, primarily because of the fact that we were having issues with food supply demands and the threat of food supply when COVID-19 affected some of the manufacturers of beef and chicken and so forth. And so what SBA basically did was they reallocated or reappropriate the use of the EIDL strictly to farmers and farmer cooperatives and organizations. That has been now reopened to the general public and was reopened to on June 15th of this year. And so now SBA is now processing all applications, for those who are in need of disaster assistance relief. And you can get this information or go and apply on the hyperlink that's provided within the slide there. Now, keep in mind that the SBA at one time was offering $10,000 as in advance monies. That has changed to the point where the offer is actually going to be $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000 total in actually grant monies or advance monies. In addition to that, should your EIDL advance monies be used primarily for payroll purposes, it would be reducing down the PPP loan forgiveness amount if you also apply for loan forgiveness under the PPP program. For more information, because this is an ongoing concern right now with our EIDL program, you can call the service desk at 1-800-659-2955. And if you can ask for a tier 2 person, that individual will give you more updated information. Unfortunately, I receive a lot of calls in my office, and I'm not privy to the systems within the SBA's disaster program that would provide me information that I can assist you with. So therefore, I've asked many businesses or individuals who have called our office to get a hold of that 800 number and actually call them. The best time to call them would actually be during the time period that everyone else is sleeping back in the United States. So if it is 12 o'clock in the afternoon here in Guam, it'll be 10 o'clock in the evening back in the East Coast. So therefore, that's probably an ideal time for you to give the 800 number a call when everyone else in the country is sleeping and we're still awake. Next slide, please. Okay, today, I guess you would say stateside time. We still have a couple hours left on the program, but the Paycheck Protection Program would actually be expiring in June 30th, Eastern Standard Time at 11:59. The banks must accept the application and process the application to get it funded. If the bank accepts your application and does not process your application to get funded, and therefore is not considered a PPP loan. So the key there is the application must be received and the loans funded by the SBA by this deadline, which is kind of short right now. Next, please. Okay, this gives you a demonstration of the funds that are actually expended within the CNMI as of June 27th. 461 businesses and nonprofit organizations actually benefited from the PPP program for a total of $38,791,593 that was actually utilized or approved for utilization within the CNMI, which is a lot of money that's being expended within that short period of time. Keep in mind that the PPP program was first launched back in April of 2020, and it has been an overwhelming success for all the American people as well as the people from Guam and the CNMI. Both the Treasury and the US and the SBA has listened to the needs of small businesses, nonprofits, and stakeholders. They've also been coordinating with Capitol Hill to make real-time adjustments to ensure that PPP program was helping as many small businesses and nonprofit organizations as possible. So again, that's a demonstration of 461 loans that were approved to small businesses as well as nonprofit organizations receiving that kind of funds. Next slide, please. Okay, as a result of the newest activity that's been happening within the PPP, the Flexibility Act, there was a provision that would allow for an 8-week coverage period in order for you to utilize the funds. That period has now been changed to 24 weeks. So those who received PPP monies right now and are currently in the process of utilizing their funds can be expanded out to 24 weeks per the regulation changes. And so if you are within the provision that prior to June 5th, you can discuss an extension with your lender and actually ask them to extend it out from the 8-week period to the 24-week period if necessary. They also they extended the term of the loan. It has changed from 2 years to 5 years though. So therefore it gives you a little bit more leeway in stretching out your loan payments and giving you the cash flow that you need, especially during this pandemic time period. Next slide, please. Here's some flexibilities that's offered by the Flexibility Act. And a couple of months ago, the SBA required that 75% of your total loan amount should be obligated to the payment of employee payroll cost. That percentage now has been reduced down to 60% for employers' payroll costs, in which you can meet a minimum of 60% being utilized for payroll costs, and that amount will be forgiven, loan forgiven. So the agency has made it a little bit more lenient and a little bit more flexible in terms of how to utilize the funds within the PPP program. In addition to that, loan forgiveness can be applied within 10 months after the last day of the covered period, or when it converts over the loan. So in other words, you don't have to necessarily go on a crunch time, time period where you have to submit all your documents within a short time period. You're now allowed 10 months to submit your documents to the lenders. And of course, payments on the loan doesn't start 10 months until the end of the covered period. Next slide, please. Now, the SBA also has come up, gosh, when it first came out, the loan forgiveness application, there were so many questions about it, what to do, and it ended up being an 11-page dissertation as to how to fill out an application. So SBA had taken the advice from many lenders within the community, taken the advice from many borrowers at the same time, and has created an application easy form, which is now condensed from a 9-page to down to 3 pages here, of only which 2 pages have to be submitted for loan forgiveness. So that makes it easier for the business who are not too savvy with documentation to actually fill out the form and provide that to the lending committee, the lenders, and request for loan forgiveness. So what this does is it actually reduces down time and reduces down effort on your part. So the loan forgiveness application actually is embedded in the U.S. Treasury's webpage as well as SBA's webpage as well. So you can download that form and prepare yourself. If you have received a PPP loan, prepare yourself in terms of requesting for that loan forgiveness. Next page, please. Okay, what's shown there is the a combination of the EIDL and PPP assistance. Previous slide had individual summaries of loan amounts total. What I wanted to demonstrate here is what's the impact that was made by both programs, the EIDL as well as the PPP. Within the CNMI alone, there's 875 loans that was actually, approvals that was actually given to businesses as well as nonprofit organizations. And the community has benefited from of both programs by providing, SBA providing $52,968,193 that's gone into the community. And that's all within a short period of three and a half months. And so when you look at it, the assistance is actually being provided out there. We're not certain as to how long this COVID's going to be, but our aim was to get the businesses back on track, get the employees back into the economy by providing them a salary for that short period of time and actually helping them out with their needs. So again, the program, although the PPP program may have ended within a couple hours from now, the EIDL loan program is still available for the community to provide services that is needed at this point in time. So I highly encourage everyone to now start looking into the EIDL loan program. If you haven't received one, look into that program and submit your application through the SB portal. With that being said, I'm going to open up the session for any questions that may be available.
Thank you so much, Branch Manager Lujan. For those that are just joining, Ken is, like I said, the branch manager of the Guam SBA. I wanted to, before we get into questions, first give a big thank you. You had mentioned in your presentation that there were many twists and changes through all of these programs over the last few months. And you were on the front lines answering questions for all of our businesses, both in the CNMI and Guam. So thank you for continuing to ride those waves as there were changes to the program, there was more information, and just thank you for continuing to make sure that businesses were aware of these programs as much as they could be. I have a few. Yeah.
I was also going to say, I'd like to also thank you and acknowledge our CNMI SBDC director, Nicole Babalta, has been very instrumental in being my sounding voice out there in the community. If I'm not able to get to there personally, we relayed a lot of information through her and through her guidance within the community. That's helped a lot of people at least get their loan applications in, provide them counseling and assistance that will help them with the dilemma situation that they're in. And without her being out within the CNMI, then it would have been even more difficult for us to get our programs out there.
I completely echo those sentiments. Nicole was our 2019 SYP of the year, as well as one of our chamber members of the year. So she has definitely done a great job making sure that especially some of the small businesses have this information and helping them with apply. So I have a few questions coming in about EIDL. So I also want to just give the caveat that I'm really grateful that the chamber was able to apply. We were able to receive $3,000 for our 3 staff. So all of our chamber members actually have benefited from this already because it has helped pay for staff in order to keep continuing to send out this information. It took me about 15 minutes to apply and it was very, very easy. Ken, so with the reopening of EIDL, if there are businesses out there who have not already applied for the PPP and they've not already applied for EIDL, should they go online and is it just as easy in order to receive that $1,000 per employee right now?
I would highly recommend that they do so. The program does not expire until December 20th of 2020, so it's gonna go on for towards the end of the year. If assistance is needed. The application is fairly easy. It's online. Everything's done online, and you won't have to submit any documentation until the loan is actually reviewed and approved, and then they're going to request for additional information if necessary. As for the advance monies, a lot of it is all contingent upon the funds that are available that Congress has provided SBA. That we're not aware of as to what amount of money that's being presented within for the EIDL. We are aware of what was left over from PPP, and I'm hoping that they can convert the money from PPP, whatever's left over, into the IDL, but that's going to be a congressional statute that's going to have to be made from that point on. But I do highly recommend that any business who has not applied for any of the disaster loan assistance that SBA has to offer, I highly recommend that they start doing that, and so that way they can get the process rolling for them.
That's a great recommendation. And especially, I know that we're probably getting a little bit more in the weeds. And if it's okay, if you can't always give the direct answer, but so for instance, if there aren't those advance monies available, it would still behoove like a business to go apply just in case they did become available, especially if it only takes such a short amount of time. And then also the EIDL loan, was it a set 3%?
Yes, it's the loan interest is actually a fixed rate at 3.75%. For those who are, I believe, in nonprofits, it's a lower rate or 2%. But the benefit of the program is that it provides you the cash flow that you're going to desperately need, especially times of disaster assistance here. Our term can actually go up to 30 years of amortization, so that's an added plus that you can stretch out your loan amount throughout 30 years. In addition to that, the first payment is not going to be due until a year later. So, that gives you ample time to, kind of get your finances together, making sure that the business continues to operate, not having to make your first payment to about a year later. So there are a lot of caveats within the program that is beneficial to businesses who need that cash flow, who need that financial assistance made possible due to the disaster related COVID-19.
I totally agree. I think one of the biggest issues that our small businesses and larger businesses, sole proprietors, everyone just needs cash right now in order to make sure that they can keep going, which leads me into my next question. Are sole proprietors eligible for the EIDL program? Yes,
the answer is yes. Sole proprietors and also independent contractors. So I've had some calls from taxi drivers to barbershop individuals who actually are renting the seats. They may not own the barbershop, but they're renting the seat. So salon owners as well. Variety of independent contractors, even farmers for that matter, have actually come in and asked if they're eligible for it. Under the EIDL program, the sole proprietors and independent contractors are eligible for the EIDL program.
And should they go ahead and just list themselves as one employee whenever they're filling it out? Like, so if I'm a sole proprietor, there's one employee, it's myself?
Yes, and that would be predicated upon the application process. They're going to ask you for your average monthly income, gross income that you make. So the drawback to that, and I've experienced it, is many sole proprietors and independent contractors don't necessarily pay themselves, or they receive cash as income on a monthly basis, but they don't properly report it, to the tax offices. That's where a dilemma occurs, because again, we would have to justify their loan amount through proper tax information, or if they're filing something to the effect that we can justify the amount. That's where SB will look at this, at the time of review. But for initial application, I would suggest that they just go ahead and submit it in, and then ensure that their numbers are actually accurate to that of what's being recorded with the tax office.
Thank you so much for answering that question. So in summary, just to be most frank, it's the due date with the PPP being so close, and it's likely that any businesses out there are not able to avail of that right now. However, the EIDL portal, EIDL, is open. It doesn't, you don't have to take the loan just because you took the 15 minutes to go apply for it. However, if there is more money that goes into that pot for the advancement, that's something that you maybe would be eligible later. So it's one of those, it could theoretically be a good 15 minutes of your time, or you haven't lost much if you just go ahead and apply for it. And you can consider later whether or not you would want to take the loan portion. Is that similar to what you would say, Ken?
Yes, that's good information. And I also want to caveat on that that right now what we're seeing a maximum loan amount of $150,000 being issued, and a lot of people are concerned about that because they're saying that they need more money. So Congress is now looking into this with the SBA program. As a matter of fact, our associate administrator James Rivera is going to be testifying on the Hill tomorrow, I believe, July 1st, Eastern Standard Time. And so it'll be interesting to hear what he's got to say to that effect too. So there may be some changes in the EIDL program as we go along, similar to the changes that were made for the PPP program, but that's not until we see it. And then of course I'll post it out, and the Saipan Chamber can relay the same information out to the membership as well as the community.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Branch Manager Lujan, for taking the time to come speak with us today. We know you've been in the background of all of our information being pushed out, so it's really great to hear your voice and to hear more about these programs. So thank you again for taking the time to come speak to the Chamber members and the CNMI today.
All right, thank you for having me here today. Thank you.
Great. We're going to go ahead and keep going on with our program. Up next, we have Director Andrew from the Department of Commerce Central Statistics Division. He is also joined by Will Maui, and they're going to be talking about the prevailing wage survey and next steps for businesses and just the general community to be aware of. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Director.
Hi Maxine, can everyone hear me?
I can, it's just slightly muffled.
Okay, how about now?
A little bit better, yes.
Okay, so Hero and Hafade to everyone, and on behalf of my secretary who is not able to make it with us, join us today, I want to thank you for allowing us to come on and share some of our updates from the prevailing wage project. And can you allow me to share my screen so our folks who are joining us today can be looking at it, and then I'll walk us through the screen as providing the updates.
I think if you go, Director, to the bottom of your screen and share screen, it should be able to.
All right. I have this double monitor here, so I'm gonna see if is that okay?
Yes, we can see it.
You can see it. I'm learning this thing now. So you see me, what do you call that? Clicking on something I shouldn't be clicking on. Say something and so stop.
You're doing a great job, Director. Thank you so much.
Anyway, so yes, joining me today is one of our partners in producing these statistics. Data Talks, Mr. Will Maui, and I'll let him, we'll tag team on this so that if it needs a little bit more clarification from our side, and that we can then jump in and help me out. It's a little bit about the project. We began in the sometime early this year to prepare for and set up the data collection portal so that we can begin collection sometime at the end of March, beginning April. That was our target date, so that we can have the report ready and published by the early part of July. Unfortunately, the COVID happened, and we all went into lockdown, including our partners who help us build this portal together. So that took a longer time to get this thing deployed, and we were able to get it deployed on June 11th. And so for everyone's information. We set the target date to complete the data collection phase by June 30. That was yesterday. And then we've met, looked at the, assessed the update, and then we reset the final, and this is the final for all our listeners and everyone who's joining us today, that July 10 will be our final data collection date. And then we can then wrap it up and allow us a little bit time to produce the report in a week or 2-week time frame, and then we go from there. So I hope that everyone who's listening and of course with the help of our great partners, Maxine and Roma from Second Chamber of Commerce, spread the word and help us get the businesses to come and go on the portal and submit their data. So let me just take a look at the screen now. You see a couple of pedometers there. And so the first one on your left that has the blue bar, that's the number you see there, the 513. That's the number of companies who have registered on our portal so far. This one here. And we're looking at least a minimum of 1,000 companies to register. If more than 1,000, that's even better. The 1,300 number you see at the end of that graph is what we had collected in previous surveys. So we're targeting at least 1,000 or more. Below that, which is this one here. No, I'm sorry. Let me take you to the next one, which will give you a good flow of things. This one here, where I'm just marking now, the 450 you see in there is the number showing from the 513 companies. That 450 shows the number of companies who have registered with employees. We're looking at so those 450 employers who have registered with employees. Now we go down to the pink bar. They have registered a total of 7,720 employees. This is what you're looking now is an update of Saipan, Rota, and Tinian combined. And we want to target at least 17,000 employees. 19,000 you see there is from our last survey total. So we want to see at least 17,000 so we can have a good coverage. Of the 7,720 employees, right off to the right side of that, you see that 402 have met the occupational classification at the detail level. Again, we're in the entire U.S. economy, there are about 860 occupational titles. On the last survey, we came across in the cinema economy about 530 in our local economy here. So we're looking at least 530 or more. There might be new industries with new occupations that might not be recently introduced into our economy. So it'd be good to have those registered in our statistics this time around. If I'm going too fast, let me know, then I can slow down a little bit. Now off to the other side, this one here. Now this bar here shows us the breakdown of all the occupations that have been captured so far, showing if they met or did not meet the 330 rule, and at what level they met the 330 rule. So out of the 402 that we see here, moving my marker around it, these guys on this side, you can see that 209 out of the 402 have met the 330 rule at the minor level. And 54 of that 402 have met the 330 rule at the detail level. I mean 58, I'm sorry. And 54 have met the 330 rule at the broad level. Now you see that 80 have 80 in the very top in the red zone. That's the number that we want to keep it to a minimum, so that we can have as many occupations in the CNMI economy meet the 330 rule at either the minor, the detail, or the broad level. Now, so that the first screen that you're looking at is telling us what we have so far overall CNMI. Now, we'll just do a quick update on the Saipan. So you'll see, oops, let me just clear this off. Okay, so on Saipan, that is our breakdown so far. We're looking at around 1,500 employers at this morning. This is sort of it's refreshed every time we get new data submitted onto the portal. So it's pretty recent, as a couple of hours ago or what. Saipan, we have registered 428 employers. We're looking at going 1,500 employers. Would be nice to have that or more. And of the 428 employers, 748 employees have also registered. So we're looking at around 21,000. Now we go to Tinian. 28 employers have completed the survey, totaling up to 261 employees. This is mainly in the private sector. Just a note before we move on to ROTA, we're working with our government agencies, particularly folks at finance, to provide the government data for this survey. And here is ROTA. 21 employers have so far completed the survey, totaling 59 employees. So we have a little bit more work to go, and hopefully that for the next couple of days up to July 10, that folks who have not completed the survey, some who have logged on have yet to complete and submit. We really highly encourage everyone to complete and submit their survey as quickly as possible. So we'll allow our prevailing wage team to make sure the data is clean before we begin work on the report, so the governor can submit to the U.S. Department of Labor at the soonest possible time. Hopefully, that is within the month of July. I don't know. Is that good enough or
That sounds,
something else?
yeah, no, that sounds great, Director. I do have a few questions coming in. I do want to reiterate to those listening that there has been an extension, I believe correct, until July 10th to fill it out. So if you are a business who has not filled out the prevailing wage survey, please go ahead and do so. The first question we've received is, what if the target of 1,000 or 1,500 is not met, and will this delay the prevailing wage survey?
That's a very good question. We understand the situation on the ground right now. So what's happening in regards to the effect of COVID-19 and some other economic downturns. And that's why we need companies to, if you're out there and still operating, get on the portal, and you will see the clock on the portal that has been reset to July 10. So as quickly as possible, get on the portal, complete that. We have, we're going to begin today or as soon as possible today or this week, reaching out to those that have yet to submit. We know them because we can see them from previous projects, and we can compare that to what we have so far this morning or today. Then we can isolate those, and we would like to reach out to them beginning today as at our soonest possible time this week, and do sort of a more direct communication with them to encourage them to come on the portal and finish up. We will also use this opportunity to investigate more. If they don't respond, those that we reach out to respond, they don't respond, we would like to kind of investigate a little bit more, and we have to go through multiple sources of information to find out whether they're still in business or not. So I would appreciate, or our team here would appreciate, Maxine, that if you have a list of businesses who have kind of like temporarily shut down or have shut down because of economic hardship or what, if you can share that list with us, then we can use that as a source to cross-check and to make sure that we don't leave out anyone that is still in business, and that they're out of business, that we know that they're out of business.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have that list, but maybe after this meeting offline, we can talk about that, Director, because I do know that there are a lot of businesses that are looking to close. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I went ahead and filled out the survey myself for the chamber, and it was asking for employee data from January, correct? I think whenever I had to log in, I was logging specifically hours for my employees in January.
Yes, there's two parts. The reason why we're asking for businesses to give us their information, the payroll information, hours work information, as of that particular pay period in January, is we want to make sure that we capture as much as possible anything prior to the shutdown effect of COVID-19 and the furloughing of the government employees. And then at the end of that, each employee questionnaire, we ask that as of the time you're completing the questionnaire or the survey, did this person work last week? Now, if that person's worked last week, then the next question would be, how many hours did this person work last week? Then the other part of that string of question is, did this person work last week? And if it's no, then we would like to know, why did this person did not work last week? Did this person did not work last week laid off because of COVID-19, furloughed, and all this, the reasons that are there for you to select from, so that aside from producing the wage statistics for CW1 table, that we would be able to make an assessment at the end of this project. What is the impact of COVID-19 on our business community?
Yeah, so those for listening, even if you are not in business, maybe, or you're not sure you have employees right this minute, you should still be filling out the prevailing wage survey if you were active in January. So even if your employee amount has changed, that's still important information that the Department of Commerce needs to know, because it helps us better understand what's actually happening to businesses right now. And the more data that we have, the better that we can seek resources in order either to help businesses or just really be aware of which businesses are suffering. And again, this is not public information. The Department of Commerce is not going to say that the Saipan Chamber did this to their staff. This is more just to better inform, and so that we have this kind of information available. The last question that I have, Director, is please advise if there are any written guidelines for employers on prevailing wage implementation. Is prevailing wage only applicable to employees and companies with CW1 workers? What if a company doesn't have a CW1 worker? Are they required to follow the prevailing wage amounts?
That's a very good question. And I would like to say that because of that 330 rule, we would like everyone to be surveyed. Because if those who are not CW, let's say a US citizens and citizens of the freely associated states, or others who are not CW, don't fill out the survey, and we just so happen that particular occupation is unique, and we will not be able to have that particular occupation meet the 330 rule, what happens is U.S. Department of Labor is going to go use Guam OES or something else, or Hawaii or elsewhere, which we know for sure that the hourly rates are going to be higher than what we have here. So it is critical that everyone, regardless of your status or your visa or what, everyone within the cinema economy that is working in the cinema economy complete that survey. So we want that that complete data. So we don't run into the 330 rule as much as possible. So if you see, if you can still see the screen, you see this red zone here. That is what we want to. This. Oh, this here. This zone here is what we want to keep it to a minimum as much as we can. And if folks out there who are not CWs don't complete the survey, that number is not going to be at its minimum. We want that number to be as small as possible.
Thank you, Director. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I wanted to add a little bit more information. So even companies who do not have employees, we highly encourage them to go on the portal and log on and register, and just put 0 employee in your information, and you should be fine. That's partly because we want to build a database, because we know that this is the way to go in the next couple of years, or the years to come now, to collect information from our business community. That if we have a comprehensive list and contact information for all our businesses, whether you have employees or not, we would be able to use that information and reach out to everyone when there's another cycle of data collection. And this is going to happen on an annual basis, so we would like to have that information. And the second one would be, we would like any businesses who had just recently opened up, because we know we asked people to give us information from their last pay period in January. But if you open up a business in March or April, or even early as May or June, you won't have that payroll information from January. Please fill out the online and complete the portal and give us pay period as if you were in business in January. That way we don't miss any of these folks and occupations who and employees who are now recently in our economy. We want to have everyone.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Director, for taking the time today to give this presentation. So in summary, for those listening, if you've not submitted your prevailing wage survey, please do so. You have until July 10th, but the earlier the better, so that we have a better understanding of just how many businesses met that 3 in 30 rule. Thank you again so much for your time, Director.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right, and last but certainly not least, we are moving on to Mr. Matt De Leon Guerrero. He is a member of the Governor's Economic Advisory Council. He's representing Chairman Jerry Tan today. And we're really glad to have him here. Matt, would you please tell us more about what's happening with the council?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Just want to say thank you for allowing me to be here to talk with you, but also just generally for President Velma and the SCC staff. Thanks so much for all of you that you've done in disseminating information, kind of walking a lot of the businesses, myself included, through some of the complex issues that have come up in a lot of the different programs. And there's a lot of things in flux, and it's a very dynamic situation. And getting the information it's been really, really helpful. And it's sort of in that spirit about establishing greater levels of communication between policy that's occurring, especially in this volatile environment, and the businesses, small businesses and large businesses. That was the underlying motivation behind, I believe, the current direction of the Council of Economic Advisors. Before starting in, I don't have a presentation, and I do wish that I had one now, just for the only reason that my face isn't going to be taking up all of your screen. So I hope you have a very small monitor for the next couple of minutes as we walk through this. But so my name is Matthew De Leon Guerrero. I'm with Hive Analytics, and Jerry Tan, the chairman of the Governor's Council on Economic Advisors, asked me to just come in and provide you a little bit of an update as to the new direction as it relates to the private sector's involvement in economic policy with the administration, this current direction of the council, the makeup, but also just some of the things that we're looking forward to, what the council is, what the council is not as well. The council was created under Executive Order 2020-11, which does a number of things. One of the things that it does, first and foremost, is it creates a new entity to replace the previous Strategic Economic Development Council. And for those of you, I know many of you have been involved in SCDC conversations in the past. SCDC was created in the late 90s to respond to another crisis that occurred at the time, which was the simultaneous collapse of the Korean market in 1998, and also the concern about the diminishing role that garment factories are going to play within the CNMI economy, and the need to kind of look into ways to diversify and to build in some resiliency in the economy. And SCDC did have a number of successes. I think that we currently are residing in, we currently operate a number of the programs that were discussed and created during that time and through those conversations. The Investment Incentive Act that creates the QC under CDA was an outcropping of conversations within the SCDC and the private sector partners looking for ways to incentivize business development, to again take over some of the roles of that tourism played in the economy and that garment factories played in the economy. So within the executive directive, it replaces SCDC with the Governor's Council on Economic Advisors with the intent of recognizing some of the strengths that occurred during the long time frame of SCDC, but also tried to create a structure that was more adaptable and more conforming to the current environment and the current context as it relates to domestic economic development needs in the Commonwealth, but also the economic development trajectory of the nation as a whole, to whom we are competing with, both internationally and nationally. So the council was created and signed into existence on May 19th. And some of the important elements of it is to maintain a level of direction and ensure that there are clear priorities for what the council is intended to do. So the members of the council currently, as appointed by the governor, is Chairman Jerry Tan, who asked me to present here today, Senator Frank Borja, Representative Lee Pan, Michael Sablan, Bo Palacios, Masato Tezuka, Alex Sablan, Joe Guerrero, Don Power from Tinian, Marcy Tomakani, Alex Yoon, Aubrey Hoko Garoda, and Gary Sword. And the members have gotten together recently for the first organizational meeting and kind of started discussing what are the priorities. The structure of it, as was outlined by, as intended for by Chairman Jerry, is to focusing on 3 separate priorities of the short term, the medium term, and the long term. The short term, obviously, in the current environment is relating to the role of the economy in the current crisis and the impact of the crisis on the economy and small business owners. And so the first of the short-term priorities is chaired by a committee led by Mike Sablon on the domestic policy and the domestic resumption of economic activity. And this particular committee is an outcropping of an earlier activity within the Governor's Economic Recovery Task Force, which worked with the COVID-19 task force to establish the phase structure and the reopening of the economy as it relates. And it's the reopening and phases that takes into account the health concerns and opens in a way that's safe for consumers, safe for employees, and safe for the entire population to limit and mitigate the spread. And so far from that, we've been able to really utilize the data as a Commonwealth from the community testing initiatives and base the transition into multiple phases of reduction of restrictions on commercial activity into a way that takes into account the number of positive cases, the number of overall testing rates, and the level of concern and vulnerability that we have as a community. But it's important to note that the council itself is not necessarily focused on COVID-19 or the current crisis. That the chairman wanted to make sure that it was clear that a lot of good work is being done by the COVID-19 task force, by CHC, by our health partners and our first responders, and that the role of the council isn't necessarily geared towards being an active voice within this process, but helping and assisting where possible. The second of the medium-term goals is the Tourism Infrastructure Committee led by Alex Sablon to look into the resumption of tourists initially, but also the quality and the makeup of our tourism market, the quality of our destinations, the quality of our outreach, the quality of the market, the product we are providing to the market, and trying to build that up to an international and world-class standards, which can incorporate a number of different things: the inclusion of new amenities, the inclusion of new attractions, but also the overarching policy of the Commonwealth as it relates to tourism and how policy itself within the legislature and the administration can better incentivize more quality, more sustainable, more high-end tourist product for tourists and for ultimately the jobs and the government revenue that would result from it. The third committee, and the more long-term, is the Economic Diversification and Fiscal Diversification Committee, and I'm the chair of that. And it's really looking into diversifying this, adding into this long historic conversation that we've in the Commonwealth had about trying to diversify into multiple different areas for resiliency, for better job prospects, for just greater opportunities within our economy. And this has definitely been one of the originating conversations that the Commonwealth has had economically since the trust territory days, is how exactly do we build multiple industries to ensure that any external factors or shocks don't impact the Commonwealth Commonwealth-wide. And so this committee is really focused in on primarily assessing what are the tools available for economic development and diversification. Initially looking into things like the QC, into opportunity zones, new market tax credits, industrial revenue bonds, and other opportunities that would make the CNMI more competitive in the national environment relating to acquiring and enticing US employers and the US industry to set up shop in the CNMI and recognize the opportunities that exist. And that's really one of our primary goals, is trying to look and assess, okay, what do other states have in terms of enticing businesses to operate, whether it's Alabama or South Dakota or Montana. What are they doing to try to build in more industries and more US investment? And where are we uncompetitive as it relates to a policy standpoint in trying to entice these industries in? What structurally can we fix in order to build up the demand for alternative industries in tech, cybersecurity, healthcare, education, and all of these other industries that are showcasing a strong benefit to the community without this tremendous reliance on land and labor, which of course in the CNMI we are short in. And so that's some of the ongoing work in the direction of the 3 different aspects of the council. The council was given a set of mandates from the executive order. And I can go over the mandates just really quick, but there's a charge provided for the members of the council to formulate policy initiatives to encourage economic growth, provide prudent and responsible management of the economy on the administrative level, and the alleviation of barriers towards business development and growth. The second is to provide recommendations on issues relating to the administration of the executive branch and departments and agencies that many in the business sector and many in the chamber membership understand firsthand the interactions that occur in the process of trying to establish a business in the CNMI. And it's really trying to create that channel in order to have these discussions and to notify different sectors of the economies that are operating in different silos within the government, better ways of interacting that would be more conducive to economic development. Third is to assist the Office of Planning and Development under the Office of the Governor in the creation of the CNMI Comprehensive Sustainable Development Plan. This was an important component because under the originating law for the Office of Planning and Development, SCDC had a role in the council of the advisory council for the development of the plan. And so we needed to reincorporate the business sector into the overarching long-term vision of the Commonwealth. The fourth is to serve as the counsel to the governor on the status of the economy and its forecasted direction, to create the lines of communication between the administration and the private sector of concerns, issues, forecasts of future growth, or hazards and threats that would impede economic activity, jobs, and growth. The creation of detailed reports to advance policy initiatives beneficial to the CNMI economy in recognition that there isn't a whole lot of research done as to what are the factors that would contribute to economic growth in the CNMI. And utilizing research resources in the private and the public sector to combine thoughts and ideas into establishing some level of understanding of where we're going, where we are, and a framework for which to make decisions on policy issues. The seventh one is to review all proposed regulations pertaining to increase in business fees, rules that affect the functioning of the economy, and provide analysis of the proposed impact to the private sector. In this charge, the CNMI department and agencies are also asked to submit any proposed regulations relating to fees on private sector activities for review of the council. And this one was definitely a break from the traditional functions of SCDC in allowing the private sector to have an active role in the promulgation of government regulations. It's not necessarily a veto authority or anything, but at least that decisions made on the increase of fees, whether it's on the tourist side, whether it's on business development side, that these regulations have incorporated within their process of getting approval, the voice of the private sector who will be most impacted by it. And it's important within the structure to develop a level of analysis and rigor that would portray what the costs and benefits are, so that full awareness of the decision is provided to the people who are making the final decision on regulations. And so within this, the council is intended to work hand in hand with department heads, administration heads, for information sharing, to provide information about the current status of the private sector, the concerns, but also to receive information about what are the plans and priorities of departments and agencies. And that way you can better meld the ideas and find a middle ground that is both beneficial to the intents of various government agencies, whether it's HPO, CRM, BECQ, and the needs of the private sector in establishing jobs and creating revenue for the running of the government. And so this is the framework in which the council is going to be progressing. Like I said, we had the first meeting this month to discuss just the current status of the council, the current directions and the vision for it. Some of the areas that Chairman Jerry Tan is looking at really focusing in on council-wide is destination enhancement, really building in, increasing the strengths of the CNMI as a destination for tourists, looking at what works internationally and trying to get us to be an internationally recognized location that drives in tourists, not just from our source countries, but diversifying the source countries and increasing the total arrivals from other countries to establish greater resiliency. Tourism product development, in the discussion of infrastructure for our tourists, the roads, the lighting, the amenities. This is an important conversation that they're looking at tackling. Economic diversification is critical in this environment where since the collapse of the garment industry in 2009, the CNMI's reliance on tourism has skyrocketed as a proportion of our total economic activity. And in the current environment where the COVID-19 crisis has greatly impacted tourism, global tourism, we have been disproportionately impacted versus other places in the United States with more diversified industries. But it's difficult. This idea of economic diversification is a difficult thing to tackle because we'd have to really assess the overall relationship government policy has with businesses and try to find where the hiccups are and why hasn't it existed so far. And fiscal diversification, ensuring that government revenue isn't solely reliant upon a single industry or a single source. And that includes economic diversification, that includes a number of other different policy angles. But the government should not solely rely on a single industry that may be vulnerable to external shocks that we've seen in the past. A number of occasions, the volatility of government revenues is something that is concerning and does directly relate to the economy of the CNMI, and there should be resiliency built in. So we are continuing to meet. The council, the committees have again went back to their groupings, reaching out to individuals outside of the council to bring in subject matter experts, interested individuals looking at contributing to the conversations and building in the resources to have further efforts in progressing forward within the economy and trying to get a new benchmark for what the CNMI economy is comprised of, how strong it is, and what are the foundations that we're relying upon for jobs, resources, and overall improvements to our quality of life.
That was a lot of information very quickly. Thank you so much, Matt.
No, we have to get lunch.
Yeah, I know. I can tell you're making your way. I do have one or two questions for you. The first is, does the Governor's Economic Advisory Council have a formal role in the implementation of recommendations in the recent Fiscal Response Summit?
So a lot of the conversations have really come from the Fiscal Response Summit. A lot of the members who are involved in the council were also involved in the deliberations within the summit's working groups. I know that the governor is looking to establishing an implementation group to work through some of the recommendations that were provided. And I know that some of the members would be interested in doing that, and the council itself would be a really good vehicle to have further conversations about the recommended ideas, especially as it relates to revenue generation. I know within the council, and a lot of times the private sector said that the role of the private sector within the curtailment of government spending isn't necessarily very direct, but the role of the private sector in revenue generating is very direct. And so having that voice in those conversations is essential.
Thank you. And the next question, I'm not sure if you can directly answer it, but there have been like discussions about what is the council's relationship with the execution of the reopening. And so specifically around non-residents returning and opening for tourism. So the question is, why do non-residents have to pay $400 per night and about $300 for testing? If people are visiting, we don't want them to have to spend that much money for them to come in. And how would this help us in reopening? So is there any way that you can touch on kind of what the discussions are about reopening, tourism, paying for tests, and that type of nature?
So the council, like I said, is really not directly involved in the decisions relating to the COVID task force work and the healthcare decisions that are really being driven from a healthcare standpoint. That the work that's being done is trying as best as possible to put the health of the population first. But the council has provided recommendations as to what would be feasible in terms of demand for the tourism market and what is potential successes that can be achieved on a small scale as we start ramping up. And so the conversations relating to tourism bubbles has been an active conversation of how to establish and how to communicate and how to really create relationships with our source markets in a way that would protect their citizens when they come into the CNMI and protect our citizens when they do come in. So there's been conversations about whether or not testing can be certified on both ends. If you got tested in one area, can it be accepted in this area? And what the impacts of demand would be on that. So it's really just voicing in, hey, these are the potential impacts of the current policy. This is what we feel is feasible. What is going to be generating a return that would be in excess of the cost it would take to put in place the requirements, and whether or not it's a reliable sort of direction to go into. In the origins of prior to the establishment of this council in the Economic Development Task Force, there was a target date set for July 15th as a starting point of being ready to accept tourists. And I think there's the distinguishing factor in there. It isn't necessarily to accept tourists, but it's to be able to get into a framework in which tourists can safely arrive in the Commonwealth and the population can be safe, ensure a level of safety from it. So incorporated with that was this transition period, was these reductions of restrictions on the domestic economy primarily, but also the establishment of different mitigation measures and the incorporation businesses into the framework of monitoring and tracing and supporting the mitigation efforts within the Commonwealth-wide. So thermal testing, adequate PPEs within private sector establishments, all of these things are really trying to build into the potential reopening and resumption of tourists at a later date. But we need to, there's a recognition that health is of the utmost priority within this conversation, but that eventually tourism will need to resume. Tourism is our only industry and the real driver of our economy. And so this won't happen with a snap of a finger. You need to start developing the framework and the foundation to make it safe in the absence of a vaccine or in the absence of a complete elimination of the virus. Establishing the framework and working on it from the onset and from early days really would make it an easier transition once demand starts resuming.
Thank you. I believe that is all our questions. Thank you for hanging with us till the very end. I know you've already mentioned lunch, and I'm sure that the other participants are thinking that as well. So thank you again so much for your time, Matt.
Thank you. I can share the executive order. I think it talks a little bit more detail about the roles of the council, the mandates, and the authority that the council has. And I'll share that with Maxine, and that can be provided to the members if you're interested.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Matt. All right, for those who joined late or who have been in and out, I just want to give a general, very quick summary. We've had 6 different speakers today, and I just want to say kind of one thing from each person. So from the CNMI Department of Labor, there's going to be a webinar on July 9th. It's next Thursday. That's going to be helping participants overcome some of their struggles with applying for PUA. For NMC, there's going to be a workforce survey going out to the membership. So when you see that, please fill it out, and also remind 2 people today that SHEFA is due. So just even if they're vaguely interested in applying for NMC, just go ahead and fill out the SHEFA form. You can submit supporting documents later. For the Housing Corporation, make sure you go comment on the action plan on their website. For Department of Commerce, make sure you fill out the prevailing wage before July 10th. And for the Governor's Advisory Council, Economic Advisory Council, Matt will be sending out the executive order so that members can review it there. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. We'll be following up with the summary of this information, and the video is already available on Facebook. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.